Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Ed Clark, the president and co-founder of Wildlife Center of Virginia. If you haven't heard of it yet, the center has been serving the community for 40 years this year as a hospital for native wildlife, teaching the world to care about and to care for wildlife and the environment. We're going to know more about what they do, what they have been doing for the past 40 years, and where they want to get. But before we go there, remember, if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hi, Ed, and welcome.
Dani, thank you for having me. It's awfully nice to be here with you.
No, thank you. It's a great pleasure to talk to you today. And I got to say that in my research, I got really inspired by you because you have this lifetime dedicated to helping and protecting animals, right?
Could you give us... It's a real job.
I love it. And you carry it with a lightness in you. It's wonderful. Could you give us a little insight of how was your path and how we got into founding or co-founding the Wildlife Center?
Certainly, we'll be glad to do that. Back in 1982, a conversation was held between four people, two couples, friends, and we had gotten together because there was a brand new litter of Labrador Retriever puppies that we wanted to go see. So we got together and we're playing with the puppies, and the other man, the husband of the other couple, is a veterinarian, former zoo veterinarian. At the time was teaching at a local community college, teaching veterinary technology. People were bringing him animals, and he said that he was so frustrated because he could take care of them in the hospital, but he had no place to put them, nobody to provide long-term care. And at that time, I had just left a job in Washington, D.C., where I was an executive with a national environmental group. So I said, oh, well, it'd be easy. Start a new organization. People will donate money. You can build a hospital and it'll all be fine. Well, he was a little incredulous that I said it would be that easy, and it hasn't been easy. But here we are 40 years later, and that discussion is what truly did start it. He basically said, oh, that can't be done. And I said, oh, yes, it can. And testosterone being what it is, he said, I'll prove it to you. So here we are. And we've now been at it for 40 years. We have treated nearly 100,000 wild animals, primarily from Virginia. We have trained veterinary students from every veterinary school in the United States and Canada, and students and professionals from 40 other countries all around the world. We have trained and consulted in more than 20 other countries, working with law enforcement on wildlife trafficking, working with educators, and we have, in our own capacity, reached more than 2 million people with direct programming, educational programming, in addition to the people that visit our website, as you have, and you see how much is there.
Wow, those are incredible numbers, and congratulations on all of this, especially on the 40 years.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's in some ways, the 40 years seems like just a few years. And in other ways, I feel every one of them. So it has been quite a job, but we're not looking to rest on our laurels. We are not congratulating ourselves and saying, oh, we've done a great job and now we can relax. We are looking to the next 40 years. So we are in the design phase to triple the size of our facility, more than double the capacity of our state-of-the-art veterinary hospital for wildlife. We'll be significantly expanding our training opportunities and research opportunities. And the only thing we need to do to make this happen is find an extra $15 million, but maybe someone in your audience can help with that.
We're going to get to that, and hopefully we will be part of this. I would love to. Before we move to other things, to get to know more about your organization, help us to understand more about the wildlife in Virginia. I think our audience, and myself included, may not know what kind of animals we might find there.
Sure. Well, the type of wildlife we have in Virginia is typical of most of the wildlife found in North America, with certain exceptions. We have From the largest end, we have black bear, the American black bear. We do not have grizzly bears or polar bears, of course, but we can get black bears at our facility that can weigh as much as 400 or 500 pounds. And we are the only facility in Virginia that is authorized to receive and care for bears. We actually have a specially designed complex where, especially when we get orphaned cubs, the mother has been killed, or for some reason the baby has been injured or separated from its siblings, we will get them and we will put them in this special enclosure where they get to do bear things and be around only bears. And no people are allowed to get near them except the two people who are charged with their care. And we'll keep them until they're about 15, 16 months old, and then release them. And they are completely normal. I mean, we've done post-release studies on them. We get deer, the white-tailed deer. So while we do have elk in Virginia, we have not yet received any of those. It's a relatively new project. And then just the widest possible array of songbirds, small mammals, reptiles and amphibians, and just about anything else you can think of that will fit into a box.
That's wonderful. And well, I got to say that I'm torn between two ideas here about looking at the hospital. I obviously think that you must receive different animals with different problems, like the variety must be incredible. But I'm also kind of prone to think that most of the animals that get to you, they suffer from something that was either human caused,
yes,
or
absolutely.
about that interaction. Is that correct?
And that is correct. And there's something else that distinguishes our hospital from most animal care facilities worldwide, and certainly most wildlife care facilities, because there are some really excellent wildlife rehabilitation centers, wildlife rescue centers that get animals with problems that are often human caused, and their purpose is to enable that animal to go back to the wild and function normally. And that's certainly part of why we exist, but really a more important part, in addition to our training, is to figure out why that animal was injured in the first place. So if we have an animal that comes in that has been poisoned, as an example, treating the animal's intoxication is certainly important, but we want to find out what the poison was. How did the animal come in contact with it? Was it as a result of a normal agricultural practice or an illegal activity that needs law enforcement response? And so that really is something that separates us quite a lot from most of the wildlife care centers. So we are doing a lot of follow-up on not just the symptoms, the specific injury, but the causes and the environmental threats that may be threatening other animals of the same species or other wildlife in that region. And over the last 40 years, we've encountered some pretty major problems and been drawn into some pretty major battles. But throughout the process, we've been able to, as an example, identify one chemical that was killing 2 million birds a year here in North America or in the United States, a chemical called carbofuran, sold under the trade name Furadan. And it was used in cornfields and soybean fields. And it was so toxic that it just could not be safely used. And we managed to gather and compile the scientific data. And eventually, the United States Environmental Protection Agency did ban that chemical. And that really results in 2 million birds a year that are not dying because of the proliferation of that chemical. And it all started with one eagle. We had one eagle brought in that had been poisoned by that, but because we found out what the poison was and pursued it, 2 million birds every year are the beneficiaries.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. It's vital work. I'm actually surprised with these numbers. It's really insane how little we know, right, about all the things that go on in an environment. And this activity, this initiative also goes hand in hand with your commitment to education, right?
Well, we are a teaching hospital, so we don't teach in order to be able to care for injured animals. We care for injured animals in order to be able to teach. And that seems a little semantic, but the bottom line is there are many places that care for more animals than we care for. We treat somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 animals a year. And it varies from year to year based on weather, based on lots of things. But the purpose is when we are treating these animals and diagnosing their injuries and determining the therapies necessary to return them to the wild, at our side with our veterinary staff are students from around the world who are learning to apply general veterinary skills to the very specific world of clinical wildlife medicine, and then to apply clinical studies back to the studies of environmental health. And we subscribe to a school of thought called One Health. One Health is the assertion that environmental health, animal health, and human health are all connected, and we cannot have any without the others, and that they are one health. So the health of the planet affects the environment, animals, people, all the same. And it's a responsibility to care for the planet in order to care for ourselves and the things about which we care.
Well, absolutely. And I love this idea of One Health. It makes complete sense in my head. And hopefully we can spread the word about that too. I think it's really a different and very important perspective to look at it as a whole, right? Not as separate realms.
And to look for connections. And we've had so many situations around the world where we find that an environmental problem creates the conditions for a health problem, whether it's human health or whatever. So we had an outbreak of what's called Zika virus, which is, of course, endemic to Brazil. We had it in southern Florida, and it was being spread by an Asian mosquito, the Asian tiger mosquito, that was breeding in tire dumps, old tires disposed improperly and not recycled. They collect water. They provide a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes, including this invasive mosquito that somehow picked up this invasive virus, and we had an outbreak. And that is just a perfect example of how environmental health, the intrusion of invasive species, the failure to dispose of our waste properly, recycle what can be recycled, will ultimately come back and threaten humans.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that example. It's really perfect. And it helps us to see, especially with Zika, I think something that got local for me first, and then it spread like super fast. And it was actually scary to know how, again, little we know and little we stop to think about the connections and the need for balance, right, between human action and animal life.
Well, and part of what we try to do as well, Danny, is to break it down so that some of these problems that are truly global can be addressed through personal action. So we climate change, it's so big, it's so huge. What can we do? Well, let's just not do anything and feel bad about it. But the truth is, a lot of what we do is to try and show people through the experiences of our wild patients that their individual actions can really make a difference. And I mean, it may be something as simple as a person driving down the road, eating an apple, and they throw the apple core out the window. And they may think, okay, that some animal will eat it. Isn't that a good thing? Well, not if the animal coming to eat your apple core started off on the other side of the road. You have lured them into the highway unintentionally. And something just that simple can make a light bulb come on over someone's head, and they see that they need to think more carefully before rationalizing that throwing organic waste from a car is a good thing to do.
Well, absolutely. Well, Ed, I also would like to talk a little bit more about this technical training you provide, if you don't mind, because that got me really intrigued and, instigated to learn more about what you do, because you actually managed to do this in an international level, as you mentioned before.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So expand a little bit more. What programs do you have? What activities do you
we have a number of programs for people who are in undergraduate programs, maybe in their looking for their first college degree, an undergraduate degree in biology or environmental science or whatever. and they're not sure what they want to do for their career. So they can come and spend 12 weeks with us in our wildlife rehabilitation internship programs, and they get exposed in a formal way. This is not just volunteer labor, very structured training, and there are projects and there are tests. And when somebody completes the program, they come out with a certificate that says they have mastered the skills of basic wildlife rehabilitation. Then we have programs specific for veterinary trainees. So here in the United States, you typically would go to 4 years for an undergraduate degree and then 4 years for your veterinary training. It differs around the world, but people who have completed the classroom training in veterinary medicine oftentimes really don't have very much hands-on experience. And most of the training, most of the veterinarians around the world get is about domestic animals, livestock, horses, pets, that type of thing, poultry. And a lot of that can be applied to wildlife, but there's some really major differences as well. And that is really what we try to do. So when people leave after maybe they've been there a month or 2 months, they're probably not really wildlife experts, but they at least know what they don't know, and they at least know how to get answers. We also have postdoctoral training. So we have 1-year programs in clinical wildlife medicine so that a graduate veterinarian, somebody who's already completed their studies, will come and spend a year working in our clinical setting where they may care for 3,500 patients, and that will give them real expertise. And then in addition to that, we also have what is called a research fellowship, through which a wildlife veterinarian, somebody with experience, can spend up to 3 years working in our facility studying particular environmental problems. And our last research fellow did a 3-year study of the issue of mange, the skin mite, sarcoptic mange, that has recently been affecting black bears in this part of the United States. And very valuable studies indeed. So we publish a lot. When we work with our patients, if we discover new things, we will write up the papers, we'll submit them for peer review and publication in scientific journals worldwide.
Oh, that's major. And well, you also have this project that's called WildOne, right?
Yes.
I loved it. Yeah.
Well, what we discovered, the tragic events of 9/11 here in the United States, when the terrorist attack that killed over 3,500 people, we discovered that the United States was vulnerable in many ways, not just from people flying airplanes into buildings, but we had several attacks that involved the disease anthrax, which is primarily an animal disease that is also pathogenic to people. And while we have pretty good epidemiological monitoring of human health across the United States through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we found that there really wasn't anything as far as wildlife health. There is a federal agency that compiles information about wildlife health events, but they don't compile it as a real-time practice. It's at the end of the year, somebody from a state agency will send this federal agency their annual report. And at the end of the year, you can look back and maybe you can say, well, there were a lot of birds died here. Here's what it probably was. But it's all academic and retrospective. So our Department of Defense here in the United States was interested in entertaining new designs, new concepts. And so we created a database that we give away to wildlife care organizations worldwide. And that through that database, if people keep it up to date, not only can an individual wildlife hospital manage their patients very effectively, but that information can then become available in a centralized way for looking at cumulative impacts. As an example, here in the United States, in California, probably about 10 years ago, there was an outbreak of disease in pelicans. And there were over 400 brought in to 20 different wildlife care centers all up and down the California coast. But because they weren't connected, nobody realized it until the end of the year. And so nobody was able to study it when it was really happening.
The WildOne system, which stands for Wildlife Incident Log and Database, and then online network, that has the potential to be programmed in advance so that if certain things occur, then the system will hold up its hand and say, hey, you need to look at this. We may have this disease in this location. And ultimately, it was original for the United States, but we've now adapted it for use in Latin America. It's in use in Southern Africa. It's in use in Australia, where it's being used to keep track of the wildlife affected by the horrible wildfires they've had down there. And we just this week, we've been contacted about adapting the system for use in Israel.
Wow. I got to say that I have this feeling that I need to thank you for so many things.
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's a team effort. You don't need to thank me.
I know. But
my job is hire good people and then try to stay out of their way.
Oh, yeah. But so please extend this thank you for everybody that you know. It's just wonderful. For everybody listening, we tried to cover some ground here, but of course, you can get much more information on their website, which is wildlifecenter.org. Please check it out, the website. You can get in touch if you either have an animal in peril or if you want to be part of their trainings, like the technical trainings, or just want to know more about what they do. Go there. And also, that is a good platform for people to get in touch to help you achieve that dream that you mentioned at the beginning. Is that right? What are the best ways for people to help? Let me know.
Yes, well, absolutely. We certainly would be delighted to hear from folks. We have friends and supporters worldwide. And even if you're not in the United States, we can often refer people to organizations in their own countries or in their own regions where they can become involved in a hands-on way. And we truly are located in Virginia, but we are very much an international organization. Our focus is not just our local community. As I say, we get students from around the world at all stages. We collaborate around the world with researchers and people studying wildlife health issues. And above all, we are here to help. We provide consulting work for new organizations, existing organizations that want to strengthen their management, strengthen their fundraising programs, what have you. And as we look forward, we're looking forward to a new facility that will enable us to rather dramatically expand our work on all fronts.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ed. I loved talking to you. It was truly a great conversation.
Well, we'll look forward to doing it again soon, Danny. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And definitely let's schedule another meeting.
Absolutely. By all means, let's do that.
And for everybody listening, also, thank you so much. And remember, if you enjoyed the episode, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that helps us show the algorithms that this is an important conversation, and then more people can learn about the importance of the Wildlife Center of Virginia. Go check out their website, donate if you can, get involved if you can, and I'll see you at the next episode.